Have you ever noticed something strange? Two people can say the exact same words, the exact same sentence, with the exact same meaning. Yet, one person instantly earns respect, and the other gets ignored. Why? It's not their clothes. It's not their height. It's not even what they say. It's their voice. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Your voice is revealing things about you before people ever get to know you. It reveals your confidence, your fears, your self-worth, your insecurities, your certainty, your hesitation. And most people have absolutely no idea they're broadcasting all of this every single day. Think about it. Have you ever spoken during a meeting, then immediately replayed every word in your head, wondering if you sounded stupid, wondering if people judged you, wondering if you should have stayed silent? Or maybe you've met someone who didn't seem particularly smart, but somehow everyone listened when they spoke. The room became quiet. People paid attention. Their words carried weight, almost like their voice had gravity. Why does that happen? And more importantly, why do some people spend years trying to become confident, yet their voice still sounds uncertain? The answer has nothing to do with speaking louder. In fact, some of the most powerful voices are surprisingly quiet. But before we get there, I want you to imagine something. Imagine walking into a room. Nobody knows your job. Nobody knows your income. Nobody knows your achievements. Nobody knows your education. The only thing they know is the first few seconds of your voice. What would they learn about you? Because whether you realize it or not, people are already making decisions, not based on your words, based on the confidence hiding underneath them. And that's where everything changes, because confidence is not something people see first. It's something they hear long before they see proof, long before they see results, long before they know your story. Your voice speaks for you, even when you're trying not to. And most people spend years working on confidence without ever fixing the one thing exposing their insecurity, their voice. But here's where it gets interesting. A weak voice is rarely a voice problem. It's usually an identity problem. Let me explain. Picture a young man standing in front of a classroom. His heart is racing. His hands are shaking. His mouth feels dry. He knows the answer. He prepared all night. He studied harder than everyone else. Yet, when he starts speaking, his voice becomes smaller, softer, uncertain. The words stumble out, not because he lacks knowledge, but because deep inside, he is asking a dangerous question. What if they judge me? And the moment that question appears, his confidence disappears, because confidence and self-protection cannot exist at the same time. Read that again. Confidence and self-protection cannot exist at the same time. The moment you're trying to protect yourself from judgment, your voice changes, your energy changes, your posture changes, your presence changes. People can hear it, even if they don't know why. This is why some people sound nervous even when they're qualified, and why others sound confident even when they're not. One person is trying to avoid rejection. The other is trying to express truth. Huge difference. And your voice always reveals which one you're doing. Have you ever noticed how children speak? When a child wants something, they ask directly. When they're excited, everyone knows. When they're upset, everyone knows. There is no mask, no performance, no overthinking. Just expression, then life happens. People laugh, people criticize, people compare, people reject. And slowly, we stop expressing, we start calculating, we start filtering. We start editing ourselves until one day, we're no longer speaking freely. We're speaking carefully, And careful voices rarely sound confident. Because confidence is not perfection. Confidence is permission. Permission to exist, permission to speak, permission to be seen, permission to be wrong, permission to take up space. The people with the strongest voices understand something most people don't. They are not trying to sound impressive. They're trying to be real, and reality has power. Think about someone you've admired. Maybe a teacher, a leader, a mentor, a speaker. Was their voice perfect? Probably not. But it felt genuine. It felt certain. It felt grounded. Because authenticity creates trust, and trust creates influence. But here's the psychological trap. Most people think confidence comes first, then their voice improves. The truth is often the opposite. Sometimes your voice teaches your brain how to feel. Think about what happens when someone constantly apologizes, sorry, 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 sorry. Even when they did nothing wrong, over time, their mind begins believing they have something to apologize for. Now, imagine speaking slowly, clearly, calmly, without rushing, without seeking approval, without trying to prove yourself. What happens? Your brain starts receiving a different message, a powerful message. I belong here. And that's where confidence begins, not in the mind, but in behavior. Because your identity is shaped by repeated actions. And your voice is one of the most powerful actions you repeat every day. This reminds me of a story. A man once applied for a leadership position. On paper, he wasn't the strongest candidate. Others had better qualifications, more experience, more achievements, yet he got the job. Years later, someone asked why. The answer shocked them. We trusted him. That's it. Not smartest, not most talented, not most experienced, most trusted. And trust began the moment he spoke, not because he used fancy words, not because he sounded perfect, because his voice communicated certainty. His voice said, I know who I am. Most people underestimate how valuable that is. In a world full of noise, certainty stands out. Not arrogance, not ego. Certainty, there's a difference. Arrogance tries to convince people. Certainty doesn't need to. Arrogance shouts. Certainty speaks. Arrogance seeks attention. Certainty attracts it, and your voice reveals which one you're carrying. Now here's something almost nobody talks about. Many people believe they have a confidence problem, but they actually have an overthinking problem. Watch what happens before someone speaks. They think. Then they think about thinking. Then they think about how others will think about their thinking. And suddenly, the moment is gone. The natural flow disappears. Their voice becomes trapped inside their head. Maybe you've experienced this. You wanted to speak. You had something valuable to say. Then you started analyzing and analyzing and analyzing until silence won. The tragedy isn't that you stayed quiet. The tragedy is what happens over years. Every time you silence yourself, a small part of your confidence disappears. Every time fear makes the decision, fear grows stronger. Every time you don't trust your voice, you teach yourself that your voice cannot be trusted. And eventually, you stop speaking with power. Not because you can't, because you've trained yourself not to. But here's the good news. The process works both ways. Every time you speak, despite fear, confidence grows. Every time you express your opinion, confidence grows. Every time you stop apologizing for existing, confidence grows. Every time your voice tells the truth, confidence grows. Not instantly, not dramatically, but consistently, like a muscle, because confidence isn't built in one courageous moment. It's built in thousands of small moments. Moments nobody sees. Moments where you choose expression over fear. Moments where you choose authenticity over approval. Moments where you choose growth over comfort. And eventually, something remarkable happens. People start hearing a different version of you, not because your voice changed, because you changed. And that's when your voice becomes powerful, not when it becomes louder, when it becomes honest. But there's another reason your voice reveals confidence, a reason most people never notice. And once you see it, you'll never hear conversations the same way again. Because confidence isn't hidden in the words, it's hidden in the spaces between them. Listen carefully to powerful communicators. Not the loud ones, not the flashy ones. The truly powerful ones, they are comfortable with silence, and that changes everything. Most people rush when they speak. They race through sentences. They fill every pause. They fear silence. Why? Because silence feels dangerous. Silence feels like judgment. Silence feels like exposure. Silence feels like standing in a spotlight with nowhere to hide. So they keep talking and talking and talking, trying to outrun discomfort. But confidence does the opposite. Confidence is comfortable being seen. Confidence doesn't panic during pauses. Confidence doesn't rush to prove itself. Confidence understands something important. The person who controls the pace often controls the conversation. Think about the last time someone asked you a difficult question. What happened? Maybe you answered immediately. Maybe you spoke too fast. Maybe your words became tangled. Maybe your voice became higher. Because pressure entered the room. And pressure reveals truth. Pressure doesn't create insecurity. It exposes insecurity. That's why your voice changes during stressful moments. Your voice becomes a mirror reflecting what you believe about yourself. If deep down you believe, I need everyone to like me, your voice will reveal it. If you believe, I can't make mistakes, your voice will reveal it. If you believe, I must prove my worth, your voice will reveal it, and people can feel it not consciously, but emotionally. Human beings are incredibly sensitive to emotional signals. Long before language existed, we learned to detect confidence. We learned to detect fear. We learned to detect certainty. We learned to detect hesitation. And even today, those ancient instincts are still running in the background. That's why you can often tell when someone is nervous, even before they say anything meaningful. Their voice gives them away. But here's the deeper lesson. Your goal is not to hide nervousness. Your goal is to become bigger than nervousness. There's a difference.
Many people try to appear confident. Very few become confident. One is performance.
The other is transformation. Performance is exhausting. Transformation is freedom. And your voice knows the difference. Imagine two actors on a stage. The first actor memorizes every line, every gesture, every expression. They're technically perfect, but somehow, something feels missing. The second actor becomes the character. They don't act confident. They feel confident. And suddenly, the audience believes every word. Why? Because authenticity always travels farther than performance. The same thing happens in real life. People spend years trying to sound confident. Instead of becoming the kind of person whose confidence naturally appears in their voice. That's the shortcut nobody talks about. Work on the person. The voice will follow. Think about this. Have you ever met someone who became completely different after achieving something meaningful? Maybe they lost weight, started a business, learned a skill, overcame a fear. Suddenly, their voice changed. Their posture changed. Their energy changed. Not because they took a speaking course, because their identity changed. Achievement created evidence. Evidence created belief. Belief created confidence. Confidence changed the voice. That's why true confidence cannot be faked forever. Eventually, reality catches up. Your voice always returns to what you truly believe about yourself. And this is where most people get stuck. They wait for confidence before taking action. But confidence comes after action, not before. The confident speaker wasn't born confident. The confident leader wasn't born confident. The confident entrepreneur wasn't born confident. The confident student wasn't born confident at some point. All of them felt fear. All of them doubted themselves. All of them wanted to quit. The difference is simple. They moved anyway, and every time they moved through fear, their confidence expanded. Imagine confidence as a room. Most people live in a tiny room, a room built from comfort, safety, predictability, and whenever life asks them to do something uncomfortable, speak up. Ask a question. Share an opinion. Start a conversation. Set a boundary. Their room feels too small. Fear appears. So they retreat. But confident people do something different. They expand the room. Little by little. Conversation by conversation. Challenge by challenge. Risk by risk. Until eventually, the things that once terrified them become normal. And their voice reflects that growth. Because your voice is not just sound, it's accumulated experience. It's years of victories, years of failures, years of lessons, years of choices, all compressed into a few seconds of speech. That's why some voices instantly feel powerful. They're carrying history, not performance history. But let's talk about something even more personal: loneliness. Because many people lose confidence in their voice long before they realize it. Not because they're weak, because they've spent too much time feeling unseen. Think about what happens when your opinions are ignored. Again and again when people interrupt you. Again and again. When your ideas are dismissed, again and again. A silent message begins forming. Maybe what I say doesn't matter. And once that belief takes root, your voice changes. You start speaking softer. You start speaking less. You start doubting yourself before anyone else does. And that's dangerous, because eventually you forget who taught you to doubt yourself. You assume it's reality. But often it's conditioning. A story repeated so many times that it feels true. Maybe someone laughed at you years ago. Maybe someone criticized you. Maybe someone embarrassed you. Maybe someone made you feel small. The event lasted minutes, but the effect lasted years. And every time you speak, that memory whispers, "Stay quiet. Don't risk it. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't stand out." But here's what those memories don't tell you: the people who hurt your confidence were often fighting their own insecurities. The people who made you feel small were often afraid of their own smallness. The people who judged you were usually judging themselves even harder. And yet, you've been carrying their voices inside your head for years. Imagine how much lighter you'd feel if you finally put them down. Imagine speaking without asking permission. Imagine expressing yourself without fear of rejection. Imagine trusting your thoughts, trusting your instincts, trusting your voice. Because confidence is not the absence of fear, it's trust. Trust in yourself. Trust that you'll survive mistakes. Trust that you'll survive judgment. Trust that you'll survive embarrassment. Trust that your worth is bigger than one awkward moment. And when that trust grows, everything changes. Your words become clearer. Your mind becomes calmer. Your voice becomes stronger. Not because life got easier, Because you got stronger. There's a powerful reason successful people often sound calm under pressure. It's not because they never feel fear. It's because they've survived fear before. Again and again and again. Experience teaches the nervous system something important. You'll be okay. And that message creates stability. The stability people hear in your voice. The stability people trust. The stability people follow. Which brings us to a truth that might change the way you speak forever. The strongest voice in any room is rarely the loudest. It's the most grounded. The person who isn't desperate for approval. The person who isn't fighting for validation. The person who isn't trying to win every argument. The person who knows who they are. That kind of confidence is magnetic. And once you develop it, people notice. Not because you're demanding attention, because your presence becomes impossible to ignore. But there is still one final layer to this story. One hidden reason why some voices inspire people, and others disappear the moment they're heard. And understanding it might completely transform the way you see yourself. Because the deepest purpose of your voice is not communication, it's identity. Most people think their voice exists to share information, to answer questions, to explain ideas, to have conversations. But your voice does something much bigger than that. Every time you speak, you are telling the world who you believe you are, not who you want people to think you are, not who you pretend to be, who you actually believe you are. That's why confidence is so difficult to fake. Eventually, the truth leaks out. Maybe not in your words, but in your tone, your energy, your hesitation, your pace, your presence. Your voice becomes a confession. And that's why some people spend years learning communication skills without ever becoming influential. Because technique can improve delivery, but only belief can create conviction. And conviction is what people remember. Think about the people who changed your life. Maybe a parent, a teacher, a coach, a friend, a mentor. Years later, you probably don't remember every word they said, but you remember how they made you feel. You remember the certainty. You remember the strength. You remember the belief they carried, because emotion travels farther than information, always. A person can forget your advice, but they'll remember your energy. They'll remember your presence. They'll remember how your voice made them feel about themselves, and that's where true power lives, not in speaking, in impact. There's a reason certain speeches changed history. There's a reason certain leaders inspired millions. There's a reason some conversations stay with us forever. It wasn't perfect wording. It wasn't perfect grammar. It wasn't perfect delivery. It was conviction. A human being speaking from a place deeper than fear. And every single person watching this has access to that same power, including you, especially you. Even if you don't believe it yet, let's go back to the beginning. Remember that room we imagined? The room where nobody knew your achievements, nobody knew your salary, nobody knew your status, nobody knew your education. Only your voice. Now imagine walking into that room again. But this time, something is different. You no longer need approval. You no longer need validation. You no longer need everyone to agree with you. You no longer need to prove your worth. Because you've already accepted your worth. How would you speak? Would you rush? Probably not. Would you constantly apologize? Probably not. Would you hide your opinions? Probably not. Would you shrink yourself? Probably not, because confidence changes behavior naturally. It doesn't require effort. That's why self-worth is the foundation of a powerful voice. And here's a truth. Many people spend decades learning. You cannot consistently speak with confidence if you secretly believe you're not enough. Eventually, those beliefs leak into your words. So if you want a stronger voice, don't just train your voice, train your self-respect, train your courage, train your honesty, train your discipline, train your ability to keep promises to yourself. Because every promise you keep becomes evidence, and evidence becomes confidence. Imagine two versions of yourself. The first version says they'll wake up early but doesn't, says they'll exercise but doesn't, says they'll start but doesn't, says they'll change but doesn't. Year after year, little by little, trust disappears. Not trust from others, trust from themselves. Now imagine the second version, not perfect, not extraordinary, but consistent. When they make a promise, they try. When they fail, they get back up. When they're scared, they move anyway. Over time, something powerful happens. They begin trusting themselves, and self-trust is the birthplace of confidence. The moment you trust yourself, your voice changes. Because you're no longer borrowing confidence from outside sources. You're generating it internally. And internal confidence is unshakable. External confidence depends on circumstances. Internal confidence depends on character. One disappears when life gets hard. The other grows stronger. This is why some people remain calm during chaos. Their confidence isn't built on comfort, it's built on identity. Life can take money. Life can take status. Life can take opportunities. Life can take recognition. But nobody can take character. Nobody can take resilience. Nobody can take self-respect. Nobody can take earned confidence, and your voice reflects that strength. Now, let me tell you something that may sound simple, but it can completely transform your life. Speak as if your thoughts matter, because they do. Speak as if your presence matters, because it does. Speak as if your story matters, because it does. Speak as if your experiences matter, because they do. Speak as if your voice deserves space, because it does. Most people are waiting for permission. Permission to be confident, permission to express themselves, permission to take up space, permission to be seen. But confidence begins the moment you stop waiting. The moment you realize nobody is coming to hand you confidence, you build it, you earn it, you create it, one decision at a time, one conversation at a time, one courageous moment at a time. And eventually, the person you wanted to become appears. Not overnight, not magically, gradually, like the sunrise, quietly, powerfully. I want you to imagine yourself 10 years from now, 10 years older, 10 years wiser, 10 years more experienced. That future version of you is standing in front of you right now. What would they say? Would they tell you to keep doubting yourself? Would they tell you to stay silent? Would they tell you to keep hiding? Would they tell you to keep shrinking? Of course not. They would probably smile and say something like this: speak, speak, even when your voice shakes. Speak even when fear is present. Speak even when confidence hasn't fully arrived, because confidence is not something you wait for, it's something you practice every day. In small moments, in ordinary conversations, in uncomfortable situations, in opportunities most people avoid. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you strengthen your voice, and eventually, the voice people hear on the outside matches the strength you've built on the inside. That's the goal. Not sounding confident, becoming confident. Because once confidence becomes part of your identity, your voice no longer has to work so hard. It simply reveals what's already there. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. Your voice is not the problem. Your voice is the messenger. The real question is this: What message have you been sending yourself for years? Have you been telling yourself you're too shy, too awkward, too inexperienced, too ordinary, too late, too broken, too behind? Because if that's the message, your voice will carry it. But if you begin telling yourself a different story, a stronger story, a truer story, everything changes. Imagine waking up tomorrow and deciding, I will stop apologizing for existing. I will stop shrinking myself. I will stop asking permission to be myself. I will stop treating my voice like it doesn't matter. I will trust myself. I will respect myself. I will express myself. I will grow. I will become stronger, day by day, conversation by conversation, challenge by challenge, until one day someone hears you speak, and they notice something different, not because you've learned a special trick, not because you've mastered some secret technique, but because your voice finally carries something powerful: belief. Belief in your value, belief in your potential, belief in your future, belief in yourself. And that is what people respond to. That is what people trust. That is what people remember. Because in the end, your voice reveals your confidence, but your confidence reveals your identity, and your identity reveals your destiny. So the next time you speak, don't ask, do I sound confident? Ask something far more powerful. Do I believe in the person speaking? Because the day you truly answer yes, the world will hear it, and so will you. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't leave it here. Take one small action today. Speak up. Share your opinion. Start that conversation. Ask that question. Express that idea. Use your voice, not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. And the world has enough people hiding. What it needs now is people who are willing to be heard. And that person can be you. See you in the next video.